Hello, hello, good morning. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. Today we have a very exciting event with Stefanos Orfanos and Jeffrey Zheng to discuss the future of AI and the actuarial profession. We are going to explore how AI affects the workplace dynamics, how can higher education prepare students for a career that uses AI and to enhance your actuarial work, and much more. I am going to let Stefanos and Jeffrey Zheng give you a little bit of a background on their professional and personal information. So why don't we start with Jeffrey?
Thank you, Marta, and thank you everyone who joined. My name is Jeffrey Zheng. I am currently professor of practice at Temple University. I started my career at CNA Insurance as a P&C actuary in a wide variety of pricing, reserving, and underwriting roles. I always wanted to be in education. So after the 7 years, I went back and got a master's in education. I taught high school for a year. Then I transitioned to teaching actuarial science, first at Roosevelt University, then at University of Notre Dame. And then now I've been at Temple University for about 6 years. I am pursuing my EDD right now at Temple as well, because I want to do more in the research area, and I'm studying student success and trying to use various machine learning models to better model student success and help flag students that we can reach earlier to help them succeed in college and graduate. I've always really loved new technologies and tinker. I actually applied to be a computer science major when I was an undergrad at Michigan, and I realized, hey, I'm not as good at coding as I thought. So I walked into a math department, and the wonderful late Curtis Huntington convinced me to pursue actuarial science. So that's how I got into the field. I've been using AI since its mass adoption and availability. I like to read about it. I'm by no means an expert, but I have a lot of ideas of how to use it for actuarial science education that I hope to share some with you today.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Stefanos, do you want to share with us a little bit about your background?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Stefanos Orfanos. Originally from Greece, I came to the US when I was 21 years old for grad school. I did a PhD in pure mathematics, and I was working, my first maybe 2 or 3 jobs were all as a mathematician. So I was teaching math, I was doing math research, but then I happened to substitute for another professor, and I volunteered to teach actuarial science classes. So I thought it's a good idea to take those exams myself. I would do a better job preparing students, and also it may benefit me professionally. And that was exactly the case. It was a lot easier to find academic positions as a professor with actuarial credentials. So I'm very grateful for that. So I pivoted into teaching actuarial science almost exclusively nowadays. I work at Georgia State University, and I direct the Masters of Actuarial Science there. Now, in terms of AI, maybe my math background shows, or maybe it had an effect on me, that I'm curious about those new technologies. I was very curious about blockchain. It was a really interesting idea conceptually. I was very excited to really understand how it works. And I did the same for large language models, those kinds of systems that we discussed today. And again, the ideas are kind of interesting, how transformers work, their architecture, concepts like self-attention and all that. But what I find more exciting in this case is actually the application of those systems, of those technologies, because it seems that they are so consequential that they are going to change how we see, how we view work, how we view education and all that. So more so than the architecture itself, I'm very interested in how these these systems will be utilized, how they will be used, and how they will affect our day-to-day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. Before we get on with our questions, I want to encourage you to put any questions that you may have in the bottom of the screen. There is a symbol for Q&A. It has a little interrogation sign. So please enter your questions there as you think of them. You don't need to wait till the end. And then once we cover some of the questions we're going to ask, then we're going to go to your questions. We have allowed plenty of time for them, so please do not hesitate to enter the questions there. Okay, let's start with this question. Either one of you, if Jeffrey wants to start, that's great. How will AI affect the workplace dynamics? Will it help level the playing field by diminishing skill disparities, or will it exacerbate them?
I think that I'm naturally a big proponent of AI. I think that it will help the workplace greatly and more so level the playing field, though it can do both, right? One of the things that it can do is it can really help students, it can help working professionals learn new knowledge quickly. You of course have to, it's very important to have double check its output and fact check it a bit. The nice thing that I think it does is it really outputs information at different technical levels. So I use it, for example, even with my 2nd and 4th graders, showing when I have a question, I'll show it to them in their level. And if I want something at a more technical level, I can get it there as well. And you can have a conversation with it, right? You can ask follow-up questions. This is very, very useful for things other than concepts, including coding. It can not only help you fix code errors that you have, it can also teach you why. So I think that personalized learning piece is really, really valuable and essential. Definitely lowers that technical barrier to entry, especially for things like coding. I've used it and it generates usable code most of the time as a good starting point. I personally like chess, so I used it to help me create like a chess results simulator. The SOA actually had a podcast series on AI and the future of actuarial work, and even one of the presenters there talked about learning about the JSON format through ChatGPT. Because coding is naturally logical and it's built for machines to read, it works especially well with the LLM prediction type of predicting the next word. Certainly it's going to exacerbate in some ways because, well, you need access to technology, right? And if we think globally, that's still something that different countries are at different levels in terms of their infrastructure. Money does buy you better access, right? You have to pay for ChatGPT 4.0 and you only get 3.5 for free. So there's some discrepancies that will come from that. I think as companies start to build their own AI systems, because these all work better with more data, I feel like the larger companies, A, they have more data, and B, they have more money to hire the actuaries, the data scientists. They may be able to create better, stronger internal AI, and that might create some gaps between companies and smaller businesses. Certainly there's been a lot of discussion in the media about like displacement and things like that, and maybe repetitive, lower skilled like desk jobs will eventually be displaced. And I think that's why it's so essential for everyone to learn to partner with AI and get some of those prompting skills. But then AI is also part of the solution because it can help you with that upskilling and reskilling to find that next role that fits you as the world changes very quickly, as Marta mentioned. Probably my biggest concern with AI isn't with the technology itself even, but really with the ESG impact during the development and how much resources and precious metals all these computing powers require. So thank you.
Stefanos, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I like a lot of what Jeff said, and especially, the point that he made at the very end of his explanation, the fact that AI uses a lot of energy. They say now that it, or maybe they project that it's going to use more energy than, whole countries combined. So I wanted to also to emphasize a little bit more the human aspect of it, the fact that it could level the playing field, but not everyone is able to harness that, not only because it may be expensive to get a subscription, but because of our own personality traits and our own, strengths and weaknesses. Some people are very intellectually curious, and they could actually spend a lot of time with the technology. They could learn a lot. They could actually use it to their best advantage, while others may not have that kind of attitude, and that could be a limiting factor to how much they could benefit from it. And maybe if they use it in their own way, maybe it's going to hurt them. For example, we are both college professors, and we know how many students would try to circumvent or to short circuit the learning process by trying to use AI to generate their homework or generate their their projects for them. So I would say that knowledge and specific skills, like technical skills that Jeff mentioned, those become maybe a little bit less important, and the personality traits become more important when you work together with AI. And something else I wanted to add is that Jeff mentioned large firms versus smaller companies. The opposite could also be the case. Maybe a smaller startup doesn't have all the legacy systems or all the rules and proprietary data and methods, and so it may be more flexible in using AI, harnessing AI right from the beginning, to make up for maybe the the disadvantage that they have because of the fact that they don't have data, or they don't have that those resources that a larger firm may have.
Yeah, that's very, very good point. Will AI make everyone more productive, or will it encourage less effort and potentially a weakening of skills? Stefanos, you want to take this one first?
Right, yes. It's a little bit tricky because in an ideal world, everybody would be very excited about AI. Everybody would be using it to expand their skill set, to do new things, like, someone who's not very, let's say, they are not very adept at coding, and they could design, a little program that does something for them, or they could learn things that it could be a lot harder to learn without the use of AI. So in principle, everybody could benefit, but I'm afraid that many people will not take advantage of that. Like, many people don't take advantage of many free resources that are out there. I mean, nowadays you could go on YouTube and you could learn about so many things, right? That doesn't mean that we are necessarily a lot better informed than people, of a past generation. So many times we don't make the best use of the resources. And so we have to be aware that there is going to be people who will benefit tremendously. I think they could propel their careers, their skills forward by a lot by using these tools. And there are going to be other people who will, who will not benefit at all, or who use it in a detrimental way. Again, I think for companies, it's really important to know who could actually, what type of worker is more likely to actually use it in a productive way, and to screen for those again, personality traits and those characteristics that make that more likely.
Yep, that's very true. So, Jeffrey, could AI potentially replicate the creativity or professional judgment or an actuary?
I think it really depends on what you mean by creativity. I feel that it can enhance your creativity and it can enhance your productivity, just like the last question that we talked about. I feel that humans bring that intuition and the emotions, the passion, the humors that at least currently generative AI doesn't quite have. Like you can, I'm sure a lot of you have tried to have AI generate comedy, and it's really hit or miss. Some of it's really cringe. It's really good at the pattern recognition, right? Because generative AI, it's mostly trying to predict that next word or sequence. So I think it's great at generating like the writing, art, music from existing data and styles. But it still has issues like, oh, it'll give you the extra body parts and things like that, or make something that looks off even to like a toddler. So it's going to create similar to what exists. And the nice thing about AI, I think, is it has such a large database that it can combine existing ideas. So in a sense, that is creativity, because some of it is right taking existing things and imitating it in different ways. I think we can make it most productive if we co-create with it. Like AI can essentially help you brainstorm, get you drafts based on what you initially started with to inspire us to further innovate. One of the nice things about AI, and I heard that someone describe it as essentially a mediocre intern at your fingertips. And the biggest benefit of that is AI is available 24/7, and it democratizes that access to that generative information and power. And AI is not going to get tired of giving you 100 different ideas to sift through. Some of those will be worse than anything that a child can tell you, but some of those will be quite interesting and worth exploring. In terms of professional development, I think that AI excels at that data-driven decision-making, right? It uses a ton of data to predict outcomes and trends, and in ways that people can't even imagine. I think back to like that TV show Sherlock, where you just have this mental map of things that come together. That's kind of what AI tries to do. So in a way, that's like professional judgment, and it's been really successful in use cases like diagnosing disease. I saw a news article that helped save a dog's life. Like it's really getting high accuracy and doing things like predicting medical scans, how proteins fold. So hopefully that'll help us create new drugs really well. It's really, if you give a set of rules, it's really good at winning games like chess and Go now, where things are nicely defined. But there's of course limits, right? It doesn't know the context beyond the prompt. Like oftentimes we have prior history and relationships with the people we work with. Every single company has different cultures and specific goals, whether you're like a mutual firm, you're for profit, you're a nonprofit. So AI doesn't necessarily capture all of that. And of course, it's biased based on its training data. So it might perpetuate past unethical injustices from like redlining, discrimination against protected classes, things like that. And it also lacks emotions. Like we kind of know when to naturally bend and break the rules during emergencies, during special situations. Like as a parent, you have to bend your rules a lot sometimes, it feels like. But AI is not human like that, at least currently. So I think it will help us with creativity, but I'm not sure if AI itself is creating or mimicking and mixing. Thank you.
Very good. Stefanos, anything to add to what Jeffrey just share with us?
Yes, first of all, I had to unmute myself. But I wanted to say that I'm not sure how much creativity we actually use on our day-to-day job, to be honest. Obviously, we think very highly of ourselves as humans, capable of discovering so many new things, of creating things that never existed before, which is true. But at the same time, the work of an actuary, let's say the day-to-day work of an actuary, the vast majority of it is not extremely creative. And it is something that I think an AI system could learn to replicate or to mimic to some extent pretty well. So in that sense, AI does represent a threat to some of the work that actuaries do. That doesn't mean that all actuaries will be unemployed or they would be fired from their jobs. Definitely there is some upskilling, there is some, changing of the nature of the work that's going to take place over time. But I totally agree with Jeff in the sense that at the current state of AI that we are aware of and we have experience with, it seems like some things that you would expect the system to be able to do very easily, they struggle with. For example, you may ask AI systems how many R's are in the word strawberry, which is a very easy counting exercise that, an 8-year-old could actually do very easily. And that's a thing that many AI systems give you the wrong answer. They say there are 2 R's instead of 3, or there are 0 R's or something like that. So AI currently has, it's not really, in some specific tasks, many of them quantitative, it's not very much grounded in, in their answers. And also some of the AI answers don't have, I would say, a strong Bayesian prior, which means that they are not very sure. AI systems are not very sure about the answers they give, and they are very easy to be convinced to promote an answer that doesn't make sense, for example. But over time, a lot of these things are going to change, I feel. And once AI has a better hold of reality, a better hold of basic facts, a better hold of basic processes like counting, it may be a little bit easier to dial up the creativity. I would think, creativity in us, for example, as humans, also is a function of randomness in how we were developed, how humans, our genes and our experiences come together. There is a lot of randomness in that. And AI systems are stochastic systems, and there is control over how much of that randomness you would like to show up in your results going forward. So there is a lot of, I think there could be a lot of choice in how creative we would like an AI system to be versus how safe and how reliable we would like it to be. And so once the technology advances and we secure a little bit of reliability a little bit more, I think there is going to be more scope for creativity.
Very interesting. So following that, how do we train future actuaries so that they're best positioned to thrive in this new paradigm of collaboration between humans and AI? Either one of you.
Okay, let me jump into that question. How do we train actuaries? I see this question as having two components. Obviously, I work at a university, so the question could be, how does a university program in actuarial science or any other major, how do we make students more comfortable or better at using those tools? And also, a different interpretation could be, how does the Society of Actuaries, for example, produce actuaries that are more adept at using this technology? So those are two different questions, potentially. I cannot speak on behalf of an actuarial professional organization, although I have ideas about the credentialing system and whether it screens for those traits that are going to be very important in the future. But in terms of universities, I would say it becomes more important, I believe, to not have a very narrow focus going forward. A narrow focus means more attention to specific knowledge and specific skills, and those are things that the AI may be able to replicate. So we don't have a lot of added value if we have a very narrow focus. On the other hand, there are competencies like communication and like, how we approach ambiguity and critical thinking. And those kinds of skills are going to be more and more important. And of course, the question is, how do you develop, how do you nurture those skills? What is critical thinking, for example, practically? I think it has to do more with dealing with situations that are not very specific to actuarial science, going outside of the material that typically an actuarial science student is exposed to, and getting a broader set of experiences, a broader set of, let's say, we would like them to do maybe some abstract math or some abstract thinking, like maybe doing some philosophy or doing something that is more humanistic in nature, to develop that communication skill, and maybe incorporating more business or more real life situations to somehow build more comfort with ambiguity, with real life situations that are not necessarily, right or wrong, black and white, that are more like what students will see later on in their careers. I think those sets of skills will complement the strengths of AI better than just, a pure focus on the discipline of actuarial science. Obviously, students still need to know the principles of actuarial science, the theory behind it. It's not maybe as important to crank out questions, one after the other. The algorithmic aspect of it may not be as important as the deeper understanding, the critique, the questioning, and the interpretation of it.
Jeffrey, would you like to add something?
Sure. I love Stefanos' focus and emphasis that you really have to essentially broaden your skill set. It can't be that narrow focus. And in a way, that's what employers are telling us about students currently, right? They want students to have those technical actuarial skills, some idea of programming and things like that. But as importantly, or even more importantly, they always emphasize the importance of those soft skills, like communication, as Stefanos mentioned, like building relationships with people of different backgrounds, being able to work on a team with people with different motivations and abilities, like that leadership, when to take initiative, when to let others lead, adapting, that adaptability. These are all things that we already should be valuing in our education, and will become even more important. So I think that in terms of you also still need to know that your basic technical skills and domain expertise, because as you get more niche into your area of actuarial science or insurance product and market, AI has less and less accuracy and is more prone to hallucinate because there's less data on that niche field that you're doing. So you still have to build expertise in something. And I'd say that you probably have to pay a lot of attention to regulatory developments. There's not much of an AI regulatory framework right now in terms of how it's going to handle data privacy, non-discrimination, the validation, like transparency type of issues. And I imagine over time, like countries are going to start coming out with more and more of these. So that's something that will require human intervention and active compliance with. I think that I kind of compare AI to, especially generative AI, to like a calculator for writing and coding, right? AI, the calculator did not replace our need to teach elementary students basic arithmetic, because you have to be able to check and make sure that whatever a calculator produces makes sense. Similarly, for what Gen AI produces right now, it sounds very confident, but it can have errors, and we have to still have some of that content knowledge to check it. It'll overall make us better positioned to do more of the complicated work, right? Like auto spell, grammar check, things like that, that didn't replace people's writing. I think what it's going to do is make us better at our jobs and get to where we need to in terms of the analysis and strategy faster. So for example, like one of the features I love is you can upload a PDF to some of the AI systems, have it summarize it, even have it find information. And I can imagine that like at work, if you created a very large document or analyses and you need to find a specific piece of information during a meeting, maybe AI can help you with that, kind of like how during like sports matches, sometimes the announcers will throw out some random statistic that you're like, how in the world did they just come up with that? But we will have that information at our fingertips instead of having to go and search through more inefficiently ourselves. And I think that frees us up to have those discussions on, well, this is what the data shows. What do we think we should do as a business in response, and have more of those strategic discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey and Stefanos. So for anybody, it seems like a couple of people might have come in a little later and might not have heard me say that you can enter your questions at the bottom of the screen where the Q&A button is. We have 8 questions, so let's start, because I want to make sure that we get to everyone. So, anonymous attendee, will introduction to AI make passing exams less important or vice versa? I will let you choose which ones you want to answer.
I can start with this. I think passing exams right now is really important because the actuarial credential is very valuable, and it gives you a lot of job security. Now, as we discussed already, exams don't always make you the complete actuary. There are many other skills that you need to develop to be really successful as an insurance professional, as a consultant, or if you work in the government or wherever you are working. Many of those other skills have to do with people's skills, or how to interact with others, how to work with others, how to communicate, as Jeffrey mentioned also. So those are skills that are not necessarily targeted through exams, although there are other modules and other components of the credentialing system that attempt to develop those skills to some extent. Passing exams, though, opens the door not only for actuarial employment, which then allows you to continue to pass exams, to continue to learn, continue to gain experience in an area of practice and gain that domain knowledge that's really important. But also it kind of sharpens other skills as well, like your deductive reasoning. I don't know whether the eighth exam has such a huge effect over the previous 7. Perhaps by the time you reach to the 8th exam, you already have a pretty good set of reasoning skills, critical thinking and all that. But definitely, the first several exams are extremely important, both as an actuary as well as a quantitative professional.
Thank you for that, Stefanos. The next question is, I am currently entering my 3rd year in the actuarial science major, so I may not have a deep understanding of actuarial work in practice. However, I noticed that in my 2nd year courses, most of the tasks involve reading data from problems and plugging them into formulas. Isn't this type of repetitive work likely to be completely replaced by AI? What are the main advantages and irreplaceable points of a human expert compared to AI?
I think this is somewhat related to that first question about exams. What I envision is that actuarial exams will keeping relevant, but the SOA and other credentialing societies will evolve them. Like, you can look over time and see that the SOA has already increased the weight of, for example, machine learning in the exam curriculum. A lot of the preliminary exams that Stefanos mentioned helps you kind of with that deductive reasoning of, I have a bunch of information, how do I piece them together to make something that makes sense? I imagine that even if AI, and right now AI, if you feed it actuarial science questions, one thing I noticed that it's a good teacher in that it has the thought process down pretty good. It'll give you right steps, but then it'll do things like mess up basic arithmetic and things like that. And even if AI fixed that, I think as a human, just like my calculator analogy earlier, we still need to know how to synthesize and put that information together and spot check the work that AI does. Because if you don't do some problems, at least computationally by hand, you don't have that numerical awareness to know when you get an answer that doesn't make any sense, or you type a negative sign instead of a positive sign in your calculator as an example, things like that. So for numeracy, we still need that. I think we'll probably need perhaps less of the this is the right answer focus that the preliminary exams focus on now, and more of what the upper level SOA exams test, which were a written answer, you do analyses, there's no one right answer, which is kind of how the real world works. I think those exams will stay very relevant because they also give you that domain expertise, as Stefanos mentioned.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Our next question is from a career changer. So she asks, for someone like me who is considering a midlife career change to actuarial science from teaching math in community college and who has just passed exams P and FM, should I focus on learning some AI over doing a BE or preparing for a 3rd exam? What would be better for building my resume?
Let me take this question and also try to answer Krista's second question, which is what's more useful for actuaries, whether they need to know how it works under the hood or how to use it. I would say that Krista, you can do all that work in your free time. I know that's a tall order for some of us who have families, who have so many other things that we need to do. But depending on where you are, 2 exams may be sufficient to enter the actuarial profession on an entry-level job. And if that's not the case, then just saying on your resume that you understand or you know how to use ChatGPT, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. But it's a really important skill, even if you cannot market yourself based on it right now. It's a really important skill to practice and to train yourself on your downtime. And regarding pivoting from your teaching job to an actuarial position, if 2 exams are not enough, if you don't have the network, if you don't have the connections with local employers, if you don't have the ways to meet with them, and you just send, resumes and cold calling and all that, and that is not getting you anywhere, then passing an additional exam may be helpful. Also, starting a master's program, perhaps. Not so much, in order to finish, you don't even have to finish it, but just to get access to career fairs and to employers and to all of that, maybe another approach for you that you'd like to consider.
Thank you, Stefanos. Our next question is, due to the uniquely predictive nature of machine learning, I think unlike any other profession, AI is uniquely suited for insurance problems associated with assessing risk and cost. How much workplace displacement might be expected in the field of applied actuarial science? Jeffrey, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I think that a lot of what actuaries do in terms of that risk assessment is still really hard for AI to just replicate. Maybe over time it will get there, but we don't just crunch numbers. A lot of times there's a lot of actuarial judgment that goes into taking the past, adjusting it for what we see currently for the future, and AI can be our partner in that. We also need to, of course, be able to communicate it and convince different stakeholders that our selections, our estimates are accurate. And that's something that you really need those soft skills and human to human interaction to do. I think that, yes, AI can build great models. A lot of the models, though, even in like our machine learning, artificial neural networks, the fancier you get, the more black boxy it becomes. And people, managers, executives, regulators, your clients, they all want to know the why. So there will always be still that demand to get to the next level of maybe a computer can produce you the answer and a better answer than you can do manually. But you still have to be able to synthesize and critically analyze it. That's why I think, especially, it sounds like there's a lot of students on the call. For me, like, I feel that over time, the skill you need to develop is that evaluative skill, because we have AI, it's going to get better and better at generating content. And because AI is that personal assistant in your pocket, all of us are going to essentially turn into managers, as checking the work, right? If AI produces you a 20-page report, you still have to go read through it and make sure it's factually accurate. So that's why you have that domain and technical expertise, and see how you can improve upon it. One thing that I emphasize to my students, and I'm trying to bake, that's some of my summer project, is to bake more AI into all of my classes. But what I tell all my students is you have to use your brain first, then use AI to supplement and make it even better. And then ultimately your goal is to produce a better answer than AI can. Because if you want to be well employed and add value, your answers have to be better than AI, right? Right now, AI gives you a broad, big picture, high level, and that's pretty good, but it lacks a lot of nuance. It's very repetitive at times, and it has its own distinctive style. And that's where you have to add value. So if you make an outline, for example, if you're writing a paper, make your own outline, you throw it into ChatGPT or your favorite AI system, and to improve it, maybe find things you missed. That's going to make your critical thinking and output better. But if the first thing you do is take a professor's prompt or something that your manager assigns you and throw it into ChatGPT and AI and start with that, that's going to diminish your critical thinking skills over time, because you let AI take the lead and you're probably going to follow along with its suggestions and miss some other things that you might have thought of if you had started first.
Thank you for that, Jeffrey. The next two questions are similar. One is, from what I am understanding, AI is an ever-evolving tool that is a great computational tool. Will actuaries have job security in being that interpreter of the data provided by the AI? And the following one says, bottom line, for someone considering a career-changing move into actuarial work, should I be concerned about demand for actuaries and security for employment in this field? So I think both of them are concerned about their careers in actuarial science in the face of AI.
I would say that many people choose to become actuaries because of job security. So that's a very big benefit to that career choice for them. Perhaps they are risk-averse people who would like to know exactly what they need to do to have a rewarding and well-compensated career for the rest of their lives. However, we need to understand that if we don't have the intellectual curiosity, if we don't have the interest in continually upskilling and learning new things as we go, even if we do retain the job that we thought we were going to have at the very beginning, the conditions will not be getting any better. So I think for people, especially young people, who are willing to always learn, to have a growth mindset, to have an open mind about new technologies, and to be curious, and to volunteer let's say, to participate in a new project or something they haven't done before. Those people are going to be fine, no matter what new technology shows up. We're talking, of course, about actuaries. We're not talking about, data entry, where maybe, it may have a much bigger effect. For people who are not willing to do that, people who just want to pass a number of exams and then relax and be comfortable and never have to crack open a book again, or try to figure out something else, I worry a lot about their future careers, and I even suspect that they may not be even successful with the examination system as it exists today, because it requires a lot of effort, and it does require, not only work ethic, but also some the ability to learn and to find ways to be better at learning, more efficient at how you digest the material, because later exams have a lot of material. So to summarize, I would say that our jobs will be fine as long as we are willing to keep moving forward and we are not comfortable with, how things were in the past. For example, we may have our parents and even grandparents maybe using phones right now to communicate with one another, or to do other things, to browse the internet and all that. Obviously, phones did not exist when they were kids, right? But they were willing to learn that new technology and to use it in a productive way. Something like that is going to be required from all of us in our professional settings, in order for us to be successful and to not be displaced by the new technology.
Thank you, Stefanos. I missed one question. I'm sorry, Gabriel. How should you manage stakeholders who want to implement AI solutions from problems it is not a good approach for, such as bias or inadequate data, as an example? I'm not very sure if I read that correctly, but you guys can read it too.
I think that's an example of a great field that will be expanded in terms of like the AI ethics and regulatory and compliance, because there are definitely going to be issues like bias and things that you don't want AI deciding, like for example, your theoretical trolley problem. You don't want AI deciding which life is more valuable or things like that. Those are nice, interesting philosophical questions that we as a community have to keep exploring and need to put really good guardrails around. And that's why I think that as AI is going to kind of be like what robotics and machines were during that industrial revolution, right? You replaced some sort of repetitive jobs that people used to do, but instead you needed a lot more people to build machines. You needed engineers and things like that. And I think that jobs that require taking the output and analyzing it, coming up with conclusions, will continue to be very in demand. So that's why I, like Stefanos, I believe actuarial science will be fine. And to reiterate his idea, essentially for all jobs, AI is not going to take that job, but I think the people who know how to use AI, they're going to have a leg up in those types of careers. And certainly your education does not end with the actual exams or your college degree, right? You always have to keep learning and grabbing those new skill sets. And as long as you do that, I think throughout history, people have been fine and done very well in their careers.
Can I also add something to that question? You talked about biases. Maybe your employer is using the system and you are a little bit concerned because the system may perpetuate bias, or if the employer wants to use the system when there is not appropriate amount of data. I wanted to say that a small point is that many times we are very comfortable with our own ethical value system or our own ethical decisions, and it's true that those systems do perpetuate the bias that is existent in their algorithms or in their data. But I think research has shown that people are actually more biased than AI is overall. So we have to watch for our own biases as well. And in terms of non-appropriate use of data or insufficient data, definitely all actuarial organizations have actuarial standards of practice that kind of give guidelines about how an actuary should deal with situations where the data is not sufficient or is not of good quality to actually produce the level of work that they are supposed to produce. So that's a situation that should be addressed already from existing guidelines.
Thank you. We have a couple minutes left. So if you have a question, please add it to the list. Otherwise, we're just going to cover the 3 questions we have left. I have passed 2 exams. It would help me any example which shows use of AI in practical world.
I think that for someone, if you're a student and you have 2 exams, that's pretty much the baseline standard for entering like an entry-level job into the actuarial profession. I would say that if you can demonstrate through projects or collaborations that you have some of the AI skills, that will be meaningful to employers. As someone else mentioned, just putting, oh, I know how to use ChatGPT on your resume, that might not do anything for you. But having that skill of that prompt engineering, being familiar with what are the strengths of this AI system versus this other one. For example, they say like Claude is more creative in how it was built compared to ChatGPT, things like that. Knowing when to use what AI system for the purpose and how to write prompts that give you effective results. That is a very useful skill, even if you can't market it. And if you can take that skill and do some projects, for example, the SOA has research competitions, and a lot of companies like have case competitions. I know that at Temple we send our students to compete in the Travelers Case competition every single year, things like that. Like doing those extracurriculars to showcase your skill sets in applying them to things that will be done in your first job will be really, really helpful. At Temple, we strongly emphasize beyond the technical piece, that student professional development piece. So we make our students do a ton of work. They pretty much set up like all the speaker series that our students have, and then the luncheon with the speakers. They manage the student website. They help us essentially run our actuarial science career fair every single year. And then they do community service, social events. They help solicit donations for the organization. So it's a ton of work that we throw onto the students, but because of that, they get all those leadership skills and the soft skills that you have to pair with the technical skills that you do have. And I can tell you that the students who are more involved outside of the classroom overwhelmingly get jobs a lot quicker and easier than those who just go and pass exams. Like, these students also have to pass exams, but after a certain point, I would say like 2 to 3, it's really not about the exams anymore. It's really about, are you a likable person, someone who these professionals can envision working with, and things like that.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions. I think we have answered some of them throughout our chat today, but I have one last one that says, I passed 2 exams only and I have 1 actuarial internship. At the same time, I've been unemployed for 2 to 3 years. Should I continue to take exams and learn something about machine learning, or I need to do other things? And I think, Jeffrey, you are kind of addressing that.
And to add to that point, I think Stefanos mentioned something earlier. We've had students, and this is that relationship building piece. We've had students in that situation where they wanted to transition to actuarial science. They passed 2 exams, they applied online, and they didn't have much luck. And that is where something like a master's can help a lot, because we have those relationships with companies. They come on campus to recruit. You're not just submitting to that online resume black hole, some of which are now being reviewed by AI. But at least we know that when we send a resume book out to employers, the actuarial hiring managers get that, and they will at least look through all of those resumes by a human, and it's not by AI or some HR person who might be looking for specific things and not catch the nuances or what makes you special. It is unfortunate that that system is in place like that, but that is something that we've helped a lot of students through, and especially that's the big value add, I think, of the master's in natural science.
And
anything, yeah, Stefanos?
Let me jump in to say that we have to be aware of our interviewing skills as well. I've seen many people with impeccable technical skills, exams, and everything, but who sell themselves short during the interview because maybe they seem like they are not interested in the company or the people they are discussing with, or they just seem, not a good fit to any of these companies because of their attitude, perhaps. So everything is important, especially those softer skills. And I just wanted to say also a shout out to CJ, who I know. He's a student at Georgia State University, so I could address his question perhaps offline.
Thank you so much. And for anybody interested, our next Lunch and Learn, we will cover tips and tricks from an actual recruiter on how to get in front of people, how to do those job interviews in the best way possible, how to network. So please join us. It will be in June 14th, and the registration is now open. I just want to thank Stefanos and Jeffrey for their time today, and for everybody that took time off their Friday to join us for this very interesting Lunch and Learn. The recording will be available on your affiliate membership list, and you can watch it again. If anybody has any questions, any follow-up questions, I have included my email in the chat, and you are welcome to reach out to me with anything you need. Thank you so much, Jeffrey and Stefanos, and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks.
And thank you, Martin and Tricia, for arranging this, and for everyone for attending and asking all these wonderful questions.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.